Hey guys! Tonight we journey to the sun-scorched heart of ancient Mali, where the courts of Timbuktu dish out punishments as peculiar as they are unforgettable. Picture yourself standing in a dusty plaza, the air thick with the scent of salt and camel sweat, as a crowd gathers to judge your fate for a crime you barely understand. Trust me, you probably won't survive a day in this world of strange justice, where a single misstep could land you wearing a mask of shame or counting pebbles for a king. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always wild to see who's drifting off with us across the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up, not to the gentle chirp of your phone alarm, but to the sharp clang of a bronze gong echoing across Timbuktu's mudbrick sprawl. It's 1325, the height of the Mali Empire, and you're sprawled on a woven mat in a cramped, clay-walled room. The air is already stifling, heavy with the promise of another blistering day. Your back aches from the mat's thin padding, and something, probably a lizard, scurries across your foot. You're not a noble, not a scholar, just an ordinary soul caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. Yesterday, you were haggling in the salt market, trying to trade a few cowrie shells for a slab of the precious white gold that fuels Mali's wealth. But something went wrong. Maybe you shortchanged a merchant, or maybe you just looked too nervous under the piercing gaze of a market overseer. Either way, you're now accused of a crime, and the court of Timbuktu awaits. You stumble outside, squinting against the relentless Sahara sun. The plaza is alive with noise traders shouting, camels grumbling, and the rhythmic thump of a djembe drum calling the court to order. You're not in a grand palace. Mali's justice happens in the open, under the watchful eyes of the community. A crowd gathers, their robes dyed in indigo and ochre, whispering about your fate. You feel like you've wandered into a reality show where the prize is avoiding exile and the host is a stern Qadi, or Islamic judge, stroking his beard as he sizes you up. The Mali Empire, at its peak under Mansa Musa, is a powerhouse of trade, faith, and learning. But its courts are no place for the faint-hearted. Historians note that Timbuktu's legal system blended Islamic law with local traditions, creating a unique brand of justice that could be as poetic as it was punishing. Your crime, as far as you can piece together, is dishonest trade. It's vague, and that's the problem. In Mali, accusations don't always come with a clear charge sheet. You might have miscounted your salt slabs, or maybe a rival trader framed you to clear the market of competition. Either way, the Qadi's court doesn't mess around. You're ushered forward, your sandals kicking up dust, and you notice a wooden stool in the center of the plaza. That's your spot. The hot seat, literally. Since the sun's been baking it all morning, you sit, feeling the crowd's eyes like 1,000 tiny darts. A griot, one of Mali's oral historians, steps forward, his voice rising in a melodic chant. He's not just here to narrate, he's about to weave your alleged crime into a song that'll haunt you for years. Historians still argue whether these public trials were meant to restore community harmony or simply to flex the court's power over the unruly. Here's the quirky bit before the trial even starts. A child runs up and hands you a gourd of lukewarm millet beer. It's not a kindness, it's tradition. The court believes a sip loosens your tongue, making it harder to lie. You choke it down, tasting grain and regret, wondering if the beer's meant to calm you or just make you tipsy enough to confess to anything. The crowd chuckles as you wince, and you realize this is part of the show. Justice in Mali isn't just about guilt or innocence. It's theater, and you're the reluctant star. As the griot song begins, you brace yourself for what's next. Will it be a fine, a public shaming, or something weirder in Timbuktu? Punishment is rarely what you expect, and you're about to learn that the hard way. You're still perched on that sun-baked stool in Timbuktu's bustling plaza, the taste of millet beer lingering like a bad decision. The gong's echo has faded, but the crowd's murmurs swell as the Qadi raises a hand, silencing the chatter. You're accused of shortchanging a salt merchant, a serious offense in a city where salt is worth more than gold. The market around you pulses with life traders balancing slabs of glistening white salt, camels snorting under heavy loads, and the air thick with the tang of spices and sweat. You're not just in any market. This is the heart of Mali's wealth, where a single misstep can land you in the Qadi's court. You're about to learn how a simple trade gone wrong spirals into a public spectacle. The plaza is Timbuktu's lifeblood, a sprawling maze of stalls where salt from the Sahara's mines meets gold from the south, ivory from the forests, and manuscripts from scholars' pens. You were there yesterday, trying to barter your few powrie shells for a salt slab to resell. Maybe you miscounted, or maybe the merchant's eyes narrowed because you're an outsider, your accent betraying you as someone from a distant village. In 1325, Timbuktu is a cosmopolitan hub, drawing traders from across the Sahel. But trust is fragile. The Mali Empire's economy thrives on reputation, and yours is now on trial. Historians note that salt was so vital that disputes over it often escalated to the Qadi's court, reflecting Mali's obsession with fair trade. You scan the crowd, hoping for a friendly face, but all you see are curious stares and the occasional smirk. A woman selling kola nuts whispers to her neighbor, pointing at you like you're the day's entertainment. You'd laugh if your stomach weren't twisting after all. Who knew salt could be this dramatic? The Qadi, draped in a flowing white robe, calls the merchant forward. He's a wiry man with a turban that's seen better days, clutching a ledger of knotted cords. He claims you gave him fewer shells than agreed, shorting him by a handful. You protest, stammering that you counted twice, but your voice drowns in the crowd's jeers. The Qadi's eyes are unreadable, like he's heard this story 1,000 times. Here's the quirky twist. The merchant doesn't just present his case, he performs it. He waves his cord ledger, each knot a record of a trade, and recites a poem about his family's honor, implying your deceit has cursed his livelihood. It's over the top, and you'd roll your eyes if you weren't so nervous. The crowd eats it up, clapping like it's a festival. Historians still argue whether these theatrical displays were meant to shame the accused or to teach the community about trust. Either way, you're the villain in this poetic saga, and it's not looking good. The Qadi signals for silence, and a young boy scurries forward with a clay bowl of dates. You're offered one not as a snack, but as a test. Tradition holds that a guilty person's mouth will stay dry, unable to chew the sticky fruit. You pop it in, forcing a swallow, and the crowd leans in, watching like you're a camel at a watering hole. Your mouth is parched, but not from guilt, just the Sahara's relentless heat. You manage to chew, earning a few nods, but the Qadi's face stays stone cold. You're starting to realize that justice here isn't about evidence, it's about perception. The market's noise swells again, drums thumping, traders haggling, a donkey braying in the distance. You catch a whiff of roasted millet, and your stomach growls, reminding you that breakfast was just a handful of sorghum paste. You'd kill for a proper meal, but right now, you're more worried about surviving the Qadi's verdict. The merchant's poem has painted you as a cheat, and the crowd's warming to the idea of a punishment. Will it be a fine, a public shaming, or something straight out of a desert fairy tale? You shift on the stool, the wood creaking under you, and notice a griot tuning his kora, ready to weave your fate into his next song. Whatever happens next, Timbuktu's market won't let you forget it. You're still sweating on that creaky stool in Timbuktu's sun-drenched plaza, the merchant's poetic accusations ringing in your ears like a gong you can't unhear. The crowd's murmurs feel like a tightening noose, and the Qadi's gaze is sharper than an obsidian blade. You're accused of shortchanging a salt trader, a crime that's less about the cowrie shells you allegedly skimped on and more about disrupting the delicate trust that keeps Mali's markets humming. Now, the court's about to weigh your guilt literally. You're led to a set of bronze scales, glinting under the midday sun, and you realize this isn't just a metaphor for justice. It's your next test. And it's as peculiar as it is nerve-wracking. The scales, balanced on a wooden frame, are the centerpiece of the plaza, surrounded by a ring of onlookers who've abandoned their stalls to watch. You're not sure whether to be flattered or terrified by the attention. The merchant, still clutching his knotted cord ledger, steps forward with a slab of salt the size of a small book. He claims this is the piece you shorted him on, and now the court will measure its value against your honesty. You're handed a basket of cowrie shells, your supposed payment, and told to place them on one side of the scales. The salt goes on the other. If the scales tip in your favor, you're innocent. If not, well, you're about to learn what Timbuktu does with cheats. You pour the shells carefully, each one clinking like a tiny plea for mercy. The crowd leans in, their robes rustling like dry leaves. You're no expert, but you swear the merchant's salt slab looks heavier than it did yesterday. Is it rigged? You wouldn't put it past him after all. Mali's markets are as much about cunning as commerce. Historians note that Timbuktu's courts often used physical tests like scales to symbolize fairness, rooted in Islamic principles of equitable trade. But you're not comforted by academic trivia when the scales wobble, teetering just enough to make your heart skip. The Qadi watches, stroking his beard, and you wonder if he's secretly enjoying this. Here's the quirky bit. The scales aren't just about weight. There's a ritual twist. Before the final measurement, a child sprinkles a pinch of desert sand onto your pile of shells, muttering a prayer to the ancestors for truth. It's supposed to be symbolic, but you're pretty sure it's adding just enough weight to tip things against you. You'd laugh at the absurdity if your future weren't hanging in the balance, pun intended. The crowd gasps as the scales settle, the salt side dipping lower. You're guilty, or so it seems. You protest, your voice cracking, but the Qadi raises a hand. The scales speak, he says, and the crowd roars with approval, like they've just bet on the winning camel at a race. Historians still argue whether these scale tests were truly fair or subtly manipulated to favor powerful merchants. Did the Qadi know the scales could be nudged by a clever hand? You're not sure, but you feel like you've been outplayed in a game you didn't know you were in. The merchant smirks, adjusting his turban, and you catch a whiff of roasted kola nuts from a nearby stall, a cruel reminder of the lunch you won't be eating anytime soon. The Qadi steps forward, his robe billowing, and announces that your punishment will be decided by the court's traditions. You brace yourself, remembering tales of Mali's peculiar penalties, shame masks, desert exiles, or worse. You're led back to the stool, the crowd parting like a sea of judgmental indigo. A woman with a basket of dates tosses one your way, not out of kindness, but as a taunt, and you fumble to catch it, earning a few chuckles. Your mouth is still dry from that sticky date you chewed earlier, and now you're wondering if every test in this court is designed to make you look foolish. The djembe drums start up again, their rhythm slow and ominous, like they're mocking your predicament. You glance at the scales, still gleaming in the sun, and wonder if you'll ever trust a market deal again. Whatever comes next, you know one thing: Timbuktu's justice is as much about spectacle as it is about truth, and you're the main act in this dusty theater. You're back on that sun-scorched stool in Timbuktu's bustling plaza, the bronze scales verdict still stinging like a slap from the Sahara itself. The Qadi has declared you guilty of shortchanging a salt merchant, and the crowd's jeers are a reminder that in 1325 Mali, justice is as much a performance as a punishment. The air hums with anticipation, thick with the scent of dust and roasted millet. As a new figure steps into the circle, a griot, Mali's keeper of stories, his kora slung across his shoulder like a weapon of words. You're about to face the next phase of your trial, and it's not a fine or a flogging. It's something far stranger, a public shaming through song, where your crimes will be woven into a melody that'll haunt Timbuktu's markets for years. The griot, draped in a robe of faded indigo, plucks the kora's strings, each note sharp and deliberate, like a needle stitching your fate. His eyes lock onto yours, and you realize he's not just here to narrate. He's here to immortalize your mistake. In Mali, griots are more than musicians. They're historians, poets, and social commentators, their songs carrying the weight of truth and shame. Historians note that griots in the Mali Empire served as the empire's memory, recording everything from royal genealogies to market disputes. Your little salt scam, it seems, is about to become a verse in Timbuktu's oral archive. You'd laugh at the irony if you weren't so busy sweating through your tunic. He begins to sing, his voice rising over the crowd's murmurs, a rich baritone that weaves your name, or at least a mocking version of it, into a tale of greed and folly. "Oh, stranger with wandering hands," he croons, "who thought to cheat the salt of our sands." The crowd chuckles, some clapping along, and you feel your face burn hotter than the noon sun. He describes your alleged crime in vivid detail, exaggerating how you slipped shells from the merchant's pile, your eyes darting like a hyena's. It's not entirely accurate. You're pretty sure you didn't cackle maniacally while trading, but accuracy isn't the point. This is theater, and you're the villain. You shift on the stool, wishing you could melt into the dust. Here's the quirky bit. The griot doesn't just sing about your crime. He throws in a line about your sandals, claiming they're so worn they whisper lies to the earth. It's a bizarre detail, and you glance at your feet, wondering if your footwear is really that offensive. The crowd roars with laughter, and even the Qadi cracks a smile. Historians still argue whether griots used such embellishments to educate the community or simply to entertain. But right now, it feels like a personal roast. You're tempted to interrupt, to insist you're not that bad at bartering. But one look at the Qadi's stern face tells you silence is your best bet. The song stretches on, each verse painting you as a cautionary tale for traders. Kids in the crowd mimic the griot's gestures, pointing at you like you're a market menace. You catch a whiff of cola nuts from a nearby stall, and your stomach growls, reminding you of the millet beer you choked down earlier, probably the last thing you'll taste before this ordeal ends. The griot's kora hums, its strings vibrating like the pulse of Timbuktu itself. And you realize this song isn't just a punishment, it's a legacy. Long after you're gone, people will hum this tune, giggling about the fool who dared cheat a salt merchant. As the griot winds down, the Qadi steps forward, his robe catching the breeze. The song has done its job. Your shame is now public property, but the court isn't done with you yet. The Qadi announces that your punishment will escalate, something to teach the market its manners. You brace yourself, remembering whispers of Mali's peculiar penalties. Will it be a mask of disgrace, a desert trek, or something even odder? The crowd leans in, their eyes gleaming with curiosity, and you feel like a camel on display at a trading post. The djembe drums start up again, slow and rhythmic, and you know whatever comes next will be as unforgettable as that griot's stinging melody. You're still rooted to that dusty stool in Timbuktu's sun-baked plaza, the griot's mocking song about your salt-trading blunder still echoing in your ears like a tune you wish you could forget. The Qadi's verdict hangs heavy guilty of shortchanging a merchant, and the crowd's laughter stings more than the Sahara's relentless heat. The chora's final notes fade, but the court's theater is far from over. Now, you're about to face the next act, a public shaming ritual designed to make you the talk of Timbuktu's markets. And not in a good way. The crowd presses closer, their indigo robes swirling like a desert storm, eager to see what peculiar punishment Mali's justice has in store. The Qadi gestures, and two men step forward, their faces stern but their eyes glinting with amusement. They carry a woven basket, its contents hidden under a cloth. You're told to stand, your legs wobbling from nerves and the stool's unforgiving wood. The men unveil the basket, revealing a pile of dried palm fronds and a clay pot of sticky resin. The crowd murmurs, and you catch the word shaming, whispered like it's the name of a festival. In the Mali Empire, public humiliation is a favored penalty for minor crimes like yours, meant to restore community trust through collective judgment. Historians note that such rituals were common in 14th century Timbuktu, blending Islamic legal principles with local customs to keep the peace. You're led to the center of the plaza, where a low wooden platform waits, its surface worn smooth by countless others who've stood here before you. The men begin weaving the palm fronds into a crude garland, slathering it with resin that smells like pine and regret. They drape it over your shoulders, and the weight is surprising, like carrying a basket of unripe dates. The crowd chuckles, and you realize this garland isn't just decoration, it's a badge of dishonor, marking you as the day's cautionary tale. You'd crack a joke about being Timbuktu's worst fashion icon, but your throat's too dry, still parched from that millet beer you sipped back when you thought this trial might end well. Here's the quirky twist. The garland isn't the worst part. One of the men pulls out a small bell, no bigger than a child's fist, and ties it to the garland's center. Every step you take makes it jingle, a tinny sound that draws every eye in the market. The Qadi explains that you must walk through Timbuktu's main market street, letting the bell announce your shame to every trader, camel driver, and kola nut vendor. Historians still argue whether these bells were meant to mock the guilty or to warn others to trade honestly. But right now, it feels like a personal attack. You take your first step, and the bell chimes, earning a fresh wave of laughter. You're pretty sure even the camels are judging you. You start your walk, the garland scratching your neck, the bell jingling with every shuffle. The market is a sensory assault. Drums thumping, traders haggling, the air thick with the scent of roasted millet and camel dung. People point, children mimic the bell's sound, and a woman selling clay pots shout, "Watch your shells next time you want to disappear." But the bell makes that impossible. Your sandals kick up dust, and you remember the griot's song about your lying sandals. Maybe he was onto something. The sun beats down, turning your tunic into a soggy second skin, and you wonder if this is what it feels like to be a walking proverb. The Qadi follows at a distance, his robe pristine despite the dust, ensuring you complete the circuit. You pass stalls piled with salt slabs, their white surfaces glinting like accusations. You can't help but think of that rigged scale test, the sand sprinkled on your cowrie shells, and the merchant's smug grin. Was this whole trial a setup to keep outsiders in line? You'll never know, but the bell's relentless chime keeps you moving. As you near the market's end, the crowd thins, and you hope this is the end of your punishment. But the Qadi's nod suggests otherwise. Mali's courts love their theatrics, and you're about to find out what's next, something even odder. No doubt, than a jingling walk of shame. You're trudging back to Timbuktu's Central Plaza, the palm frond garland itching your shoulders, and that infernal bell jingling with every step, announcing your shame to the market's delight. The sun is a merciless hammer, pounding your already sweaty tunic into a damp rag, and the crowd's laughter from your public walk still echoes like a bad dream. You're guilty of shortchanging a salt merchant, and the Qadi's court has made sure every trader in Timbuktu knows it. But the show isn't over. As you're led back to the wooden platform, the Qadi's stern gaze signals something new, a punishment that's less about walking and more about wearing your disgrace. You're about to meet the shame mask, a peculiar Mali penalty that's as heavy on symbolism as it is on your face. The platform is now surrounded by a taitersi, circle of onlookers, their indigo and ochre robes catching the breeze like desert sails. 2 court attendants step forward, carrying a carved wooden mask, its surface etched with swirling patterns and stained a deep, unforgiving black. It's not a mask for a festival or a ritual dance. It's a tool of humiliation, designed to mark you as an outcast in Mali's tightly knit community. The mask is broad, covering your entire face, with narrow slits for eyes and a protruding mouth that makes you look like a disapproving ancestor. Historians note that shame masks were used in the Mali Empire to enforce social norms, particularly in trade disputes, combining Islamic justice with local traditions of public correction. You're told to kneel, and the attendants lower the mask onto your head. It's heavier than you expected, like strapping a small table to your face, and the wood smells of resin and old sweat. The crowd murmurs, some pointing, others whispering proverbs about honesty. You try to adjust the mask, but an attendant slaps your hand away, muttering something about respecting the court's will. The Qadi explains that you must wear this mask for the rest of the day, walking among the people you've wronged. It's not just about looking foolish, it's about carrying the weight of your mistake literally. You'd make a quip about needing a neck massage after this, but the beak muffles your voice, turning your words into a garbled hum. Here's the quirky bit. The mask has a hidden feature. Tiny beads are sewn into its edges, rattling softly with every movement, like a rattlesnake warning the market of your approach. It's not enough to make you look ridiculous. You have to sound ridiculous too. The crowd loves it, clapping as you stand and take your first wobbly steps. Historians still argue whether these masks were meant to reform the guilty or simply entertain the community. But right now, it feels like you're starring in a medieval sitcom where you're the punchline. You stumble slightly, the mask's weight throwing off your balance, and a child mimics the beads rattle, earning giggles from the adults. You're guided through the plaza again, the mask forcing you to move slowly, like a camel overladen with salt. The market's noise drums, haggling. The bleat of goats feels distant through the mask's thick wood. But the stares are impossible to ignore. You pass the merchant who accused you. His turban bobbings, he nods in approval. You want to shout that his scales were rigged, that the sand on your cowrie shells was no accident, but the mask swallows your protests. You remember the griot's song, the jingling bell from your earlier walk, and now this rattling mask, each punishment piling on like layers of a very bad day. The sun climbs higher, baking the mask into a wooden oven around your face. Sweat trickles into your eyes, but you can't wipe it away without risking another reprimand. You catch a whiff of kola nuts from a nearby stall, a cruel reminder of the normal life you're currently excluded from. The Qadi watches from the platform, his robe untouched by the dust that clings to you like a second skin. You're starting to wonder if Timbuktu's courts have a quota for creative punishments. As you shuffle past a camel caravan, the beads rattling like a mocking chorus, you overhear whispers of what's next, something about the desert's edge. The mask is heavy, but the thought of what's coming feels heavier still. You're standing in Timbuktu's dusty plaza, the shame mask still clamped to your face like a wooden curse, its rattling beads mocking every cautious step. The sun is a relentless tyrant, turning your tunic into a soggy rag and the mask into a sauna you can't escape. The crowd's laughter from your earlier market walk and the griot's stinging song about your salt-trading blunder linger like a bad smell. You've been found guilty of shortchanging a merchant, and Mali's court has already made you a public spectacle. But the Qadi's stern nod tells you the show isn't over. Now, you're about to face a punishment that takes you beyond Timbuktu's bustling market's exile to the Sahara's edge. A penalty as peculiar as it is daunting. The Qadi raises his hand, silencing the crowd's murmurs, and announces your sentence with a voice that carries over the djembe drum's faint thump. You're to be banished to the desert's fringe for 3 days, alone, with only a gourd of water and a sack of millet to sustain you. The crowd gasps, some nodding approvingly, others whispering about the spirits that haunt the dunes. In the Mali Empire, exile was a common punishment for crimes like yours, designed to test your resilience and humility while keeping the community's trust intact. Historians note that such penalties reflected Mali's blend of Islamic justice and Sahelian traditions, where the desert was both a physical and spiritual proving ground. 2 court attendants, their robes streaked with dust, grab your arms and lead you to the plaza's edge, where a weathered donkey waits, its ears twitching like it's already regretting this trip. The shame mask is removed, thankfully, as your neck was starting to feel like a camel's overburdened hump, but the relief is short-lived. They hand you a coarse linen sack containing a handful of millet grains and a gourd sloshing with lukewarm water. You're told to walk north until you reach a cluster of acacia trees marking the desert's boundary, a half-day's trek through blistering sand. You'd crack a joke about needing a better travel itinerary, but the attendant's glares shut you up fast. Here's the quirky bit before you're sent off. An elder woman approaches, her face lined like a map of the Niger River. She presses a small amulet into your palm, a carved wooden bead etched with a spiral, and mutters a blessing to ward off desert jinn, mischievous spirits said to lure travelers astray. You're not sure if it's kindness or just another court ritual, but you clutch it like a lifeline. Historians still argue whether these amulets were genuine spiritual protections or symbolic gestures to ensure exiles returned humbled. Either way, you're grateful for anything that might keep the Sahara's ghosts at bay. You start walking, the donkey trailing behind, its hooves sinking into the sand. Timbuktu's mud brick walls fade into a haze, replaced by an endless expanse of dunes that shimmer like molten gold. The heat is suffocating, and your sandals, those lying ones the griot sang about, offer little protection against the scorching ground. You remember the rigged scales, the jingling bell, the mask's rattling beads, and wonder if this exile is less about justice and more about teaching you to never haggle in Timbuktu again. The air smells of baked earth, and your mouth is dry despite the gourd's meager contents. You ration the water, knowing 3 days is a long time to play survivor in the desert. As you trudge, the silence is eerie, broken only by the donkey's snorts and the crunch of sand underfoot. You pass a lone baobab tree, its gnarled branches looking like they're judging you as harshly as the Qadi did. The acacia trees are still hours away, and you're starting to feel like a character in one of those griot tales, except you're not the hero, just the fool who didn't count his cowrie shells right. You grip the amulet, hoping it's more than a trinket, and keep moving. The court's message is clear: survive the desert, and maybe you'll earn your way back to Timbuktu. But as the dunes stretch endlessly before you, you're not sure if you're walking toward redemption or just deeper into Mali's peculiar brand of justice. You're trudging through the Sahara's edge, the relentless sun baking your skin and the donkey's reluctant hoofbeats your only company. Timbuktu's mud brick skyline is a distant memory, replaced by dunes that shimmer like a cruel mirage. The wooden amulet in your hand feels like a flimsy shield against the desert's vastness, and the gourd of water slung across your shoulder is already half empty. You've been exiled for 3 days as punishment for shortchanging a salt merchant, a penalty that's left your tunic soaked with sweat and your mind replaying the Qadi's stern verdict. But just when you thought Mali's court had run out of ways to humble you, a new twist emerges. You owe a camel, a debt you can't possibly pay, and it's about to make your desert ordeal even stranger. You've reached the cluster of acacia trees marking the desert's boundary, their thorny branches offering meager shade. You slump against one, the donkey nibbling at a dry shrub, and try to ration your millet grains, each one tasting like dust and regret. The court's attendants didn't just send you out here to wander. They left you with a parting instruction that's been gnawing at you. When you return to Timbuktu, you must repay the merchant with a camel, a beast worth more than your entire year's earnings. In the Mali Empire, camels were the lifeblood of trade, carrying salt and gold across the Sahara. Historians note that debts in kind, like livestock, were common penalties for market crimes, reinforcing the community's economic trust. You'd laugh at the absurdity if your throat weren't parched, a camel. You barely own the sandals on your feet, those lying ones the griot mocked in his song. The court knows you can't pay, which is the point. This debt is another layer of shame, a way to keep you tethered to Timbuktu's justice long after your exile ends. You imagine the merchant's smug grin, his turban bobbing as he counts his new camel, and wonder if the rigged scales and jingling bell were just the opening act in a grand humiliation. The Qadi's court loves its theatrics, and you're starting to feel like a prop in a very dusty play. Here's the quirky bit: the attendants hinted that you might earn the camel through a desert task. A nomadic trader, they said, camps nearby, and if you can convince him to part with one of his beasts, the court might consider your debt settled. It's a long shot, like convincing a wamel to share its water. But you're desperate. Historians still argue whether such tasks were genuine opportunities for redemption or just cruel extensions of punishment, designed to break the spirit. You spot a faint trail of hoofprints leading west and decide to follow, dragging the donkey along. The amulet in your pocket feels heavier, as if it's warning you not to trust desert promises. The sand burns through your sandals, and the air smells of baked earth and something faintly sour. Maybe the donkey's mood. You trek toward a low rise, hoping to spot the trader's camp. But the dunes play tricks, stretching endlessly like a bad joke. You remember the shame mask's rattling beads, the griot's song, and the scales tipped by a pinch of sand. Each punishment seems designed to teach you something, but all you're learning is that Timbuktu's justice is as unforgiving as the Sahara. A vulture circles overhead, and you'd quip about it being your new lawyer if you had the energy. Your water gourd sloshes faintly, a reminder to conserve every drop. As dusk paints the sky in hues of amber, you spot a flicker of firelight, a camp, maybe the traders. Your heart lifts, then sinks. Convincing a nomad to give up a camel sounds harder than facing the Qadi again. You clutch the amulet, its spiral carving rough against your palm, and keep walking. The donkey snorts, as if it knows you're in over your head. Whatever lies ahead, you're sure of one thing: Mali's court isn't done testing you, and this camel debt is just another peculiar twist in a punishment that's starting to feel like a desert epic. You're stumbling through the Sahara's twilight, the acacia trees' sparse shade long behind you, with only the donkey's grumpy snorts and the faint slosh of your dwindling water gourd for company. The firelight you spotted in the distance, a nomad's camp. You hope flickers like a promise, but the desert's vastness makes every step feel like a gamble. You're exiled for shortchanging a salt merchant, a crime that's already cost you a humiliating walk with a jingling bell, a heavy shame mask. And now this trek to the desert's edge. The Qadi's court has layered on another peculiar punishment. You owe a camel to settle your debt. And your only shot at getting one lies with a nomadic trader. But first, you're about to face a trial straight out of Mali's strangest legal playbook. A river ordeal in the Niger, where the water itself will judge your guilt. You reach the camp as stars prick the indigo sky, the air cooling just enough to stop your tunic from feeling like a wet blanket. The trader, a wiry man with a sun-creased face, greets you warily, his camels tethered nearby. You explain your situation, clutching the amulet from that elder woman, its spiral carving a small comfort. He listens, stroking his beard, then shakes his head. "No camel," he says, "unless you prove your honesty through the court's next test." He points to a path leading to the Niger River, a dark ribbon glinting under the moon. The Qadi's messengers have already spread word you must undergo the river ordeal, a ritual where the water decides your fate. Historians note that Mali's courts often used ordeals like this, blending Islamic law with Sahelian traditions to test truth through physical trials. You're led to the riverbank, the trader and a small group of nomads trailing like a skeptical audience. The Niger's current is slow but strong, its surface rippling with secrets. You're handed a woven cord, which you're told to tie around your waist. The other end is secured to a stake driven into the muddy bank. The rules are simple but terrifying. You'll be dunked into the river 3 times. If you emerge gasping but unharmed, you're innocent, and the trader might consider your camel request. If you struggle or worse don't resurface, the river has spoken, and your guilt is sealed. You'd quip about needing a lifeguard, but the nomads' stern faces and the river's murky depths kill the humor. Here's the quirky bit before the dunking. A young boy scatters millet grains into the water, chanting a prayer to the river spirits for clarity. It's supposed to guide the current's judgment, but you're pretty sure it's just feeding the fish that might nibble your toes. Historians still argue whether these river ordeals were genuine tests of divine will or staged to intimidate the accused into confession. Either way, you're not thrilled about being the main course in this aquatic courtroom. You step into the shallows, the water cold against your shins, and the cord tugs lightly. A reminder you're tethered to the shore for now. The trader gives the signal, and 2 nomads grab your shoulders, plunging you under. The river swallows you, dark and heavy, the current pulling like it's got a personal grudge. You thrash, bubbles escaping, and surface gasping after what feels like an eternity. The crowd murmurs, unimpressed. Twice more. You're dunked, each time fighting panic as the cord strains and the water presses against your chest. You emerge soaked, shivering, but alive, your lungs burning. The trader nods, but his eyes are skeptical, as if the river's verdict is still up for debate. You remember the rigged scales, the griot's song, the shame masks rattle, each punishment a test of endurance. And this one's no different. You're pulled to the bank, dripping and exhausted, the amulet still clutched in your hand. The nomads offer you a cloth to dry off, but no sympathy. The trader says he'll consider the camel if you pass one more test back in Timbuktu. You're starting to think Mali's court loves dragging this out, like a desert soap opera with you as the hapless lead. The Niger's current hums behind you, and the smell of wet mud clings to your skin, whatever's next. You're sure it'll be as peculiar as a river deciding your fate under a starlit sky. You're shivering on the Niger River's muddy bank, dripping wet from the river ordeal that left you gasping but alive. The cord still dangling from your waist, like a soggy reminder of Timbuktu's peculiar justice. The nomad's firelight flickers nearby, casting shadows on the trader's skeptical face as he mulls over your plea for a camel to settle your debt. You're exiled for shortchanging a salt merchant, a crime that's already dragged you through a jingling walk, a rattling shame mask, and a desert trek. The river's cold grip was supposed to prove your honesty, but the traitor's nod suggests you're not done yet. Back in Timbuktu, the Qadi's court awaits with another bizarre test, the King's Pebble Test, a ritual tied to Mansa Musa himself, where your fate hinges on counting stones under the plaza's unrelenting sun. You're herded back toward Timbuktu at dawn, the donkey plodding behind, its ears flicking like it's tired of your drama. The Sahara's heat is already rising, turning your damp tunic into a steamy rag. The traitor trails you, muttering about the court's expectations, while the amulet in your pocket, that spiral-carved bead from the elder, feels like a faint hope against Mali's endless trials. You reach the city by midday, the mud-brick walls looming like a dusty fortress. The plaza is buzzing again, with traders haggling over salt slabs and djembe drums thumping a familiar rhythm. The Qadi stands on the platform, his robe pristine, and gestures you forward. You're handed a clay bowl filled with small, smooth pebbles, each one warm from the sun. Historians note that Mansa Musa, Mali's legendary ruler, sometimes used symbolic tests like this to settle disputes, reflecting the empire's blend of royal authority and ritual. The pebble test is deceptively simple. You must count out exactly 100 pebbles, one by one, placing them in a second bowl while the crowd watches. If you miscount, you're guilty, and the camel debt remains. If you succeed, you might clear your name. You kneel in the dust, the bowl heavy in your hands, and start counting, each pebble clinking like a tiny accusation. The crowd leans in, their whispers blending with the market's hum, camels snorting, colon nuts roasting, the air thick with spice and sweat. You're at 37 when a child darts by, kicking up dust that stings your eyes. You pause, blinking, and the Qadi's glare warns you to keep going. You'd quip about needing a calculator, but the memory of the river's cold embrace keeps your mouth shut. Here's the quirky bit. The pebbles aren't uniform. Some are smooth, others jagged, and a few are oddly shaped, like they were chosen to trip you up. Halfway through, you notice one pebble has a faint carving, a spiral, like your amulet. Is it a sign, or just another court trick? Historians still argue whether these tests were rigged to favor the court's narrative or genuinely meant to test resolve. You keep counting, your fingers trembling, the crowd's murmurs growing louder. At 92, a bead of sweat drops onto the bowl, and you fumble, nearly dropping a pebble. The crowd gasps, and the merchant who started this mess with his knotted ledger smirks like he's already picking out his camel. You hit 100, placing the final pebble with a shaky hand, and look up at the Qadi. He steps forward, inspecting the bowl, then nods slowly. The crowd exhales, but there's no applause, just a ripple of approval. You've passed, barely, but the Qadi's next words hit like a sandstorm. The camel debt still stands, and another punishment awaits to seal your lesson. You slump, the bowl still in your lap, and catch a whiff of roasted millet from a nearby stall, a cruel reminder of the meal you're too exhausted to eat. The griot's song, the rigged scales, the shame masks rattle, the river's dunking all swirl in your mind like a desert mirage. Mali's court loves its theatrics, and this pebble test is just another act in a play that's starting to feel endless. You're kneeling in Timbuktu's sun-scorched plaza, the clay bowl of pebbles still warm in your hands, your fingers aching from the meticulous counting that barely passed the King's Pebble Test. The Qadi's nod was a small victory, But his words that you still owe a camel for shortchanging a salt merchant land like a sack of salt on your already bruised spirit? The crowd's murmurs mix with the market's pulse drums thumping, traders haggling, the air thick with dust and roasted cola nuts. You're exhausted from the griot's mocking song, the jingling bell walk, the shame mask's rattle, the desert exile, and the river ordeal's cold grip. But Molly's court isn't done with you. Now, you face a punishment that's as peculiar as it is permanent a thief's hand branding. A mark to ensure Timbuktu never forgets your crime. The Kadi gestures, and an attendant steps forward, carrying a small iron brazier glowing with embers. The crowd hushes, their indigo robes still as the desert before a storm. You're told to stand, your legs wobbling like a newborn camel's, and extend your right hand, the one that allegedly skimped on cowrie shells. The attendant pulls a thin iron rod from the brazier, its tip glowing red, etched with a spiral symbol that mirrors the amulet in your pocket. In the Mali Empire, branding was a rare but vivid penalty for repeat offenders or crimes that shook market trust, like yours. Historians note that such marks, rooted in Islamic legal traditions and local customs, served as both punishment and public warning, ensuring the guilty carried their shame forever. You stare at the glowing rod, your heart pounding louder than the djembe drums. The Kadi explains that the spiral brand will mark you as a dishonest trader, a sign to every merchant from Timbuktu to Gao. You want to protest, to shout about the rigged scales or the merchant's smirk, but the crowd's eyes pin you in place. The attendant grips your wrist, and you brace for pain. Your mind flashing to the river's icy dunking wood was bad. But this heat feels worse. You'd quip about preferring a stern lecture, but the rod's glow steals your breath. The crowd leans in, some wincing, others nodding, as if this is just another day at the market. Here's the quirky bit before the branding. The attendant sprinkles a pinch of crushed cola nut over the brazier, muttering a prayer to cleanse the act of malice. The bitter scent rises, mingling with the ember's heat, and you wonder if it's meant to purify the punishment or just make you sneeze at the worst possible moment. Historians still argue whether these rituals were spiritual necessities or theatrical flourishes to justify harsh penalties. Either way, the cola's aroma does nothing to dull the rod's approach. You clench your jaw as the iron presses into your palm, a searing flash that's over in seconds, but feels like hours. You gasp. The spiral now a raw, throbbing mark on your skin. The attendant wraps your hand in a strip of linen, the cloth already soaking with sweat and pain. The crowd murmurs, some offering pitying glances, others whispering proverbs about trust. You stumble back to the platform, the Kadi watching like a desert hawk. The brand stings, but it's the permanence that hits harder. This mark will follow you, a scarlet letter for traitors. You remember the griot's song, the shame mask's rattle, the river's judgment, and the pebble's endless count. Each punishment builds on the last, like Mali's court is sculpting you into a cautionary tale. The merchant, his turban bobbing, nods in approval, probably dreaming of his camel. You're given a moment to sit, the linen wrapped tight around your branded hand. The market's noise camels snorting, traders shouting feels distant, muffled by pain and exhaustion. You catch a whiff of roasted millet, a reminder of the meal you're too shaken to eat. The Kadi announces that your next punishment will deepen your lesson, and you wonder how much deeper this can get. The spiral brand matches the amulet in your pocket, a strange echo that makes you question if Timbuktu's justice is fate or just a very elaborate prank. Whatever's next, you're sure it'll be as peculiar as a glowing iron etching your shame into history. You're slumped on the edge of Timbuktu's dusty plaza, the fresh spiral brand on your hand throbbing under its linen wrap, a permanent souvenir of your salt trading blunder. The Kadi's court has already put you through a gauntlet, griot's mocking song, jingling bell walk, shame masks rattle, desert exile, river ordeal, and that nerve-wracking pebble test. The sun beats down, turning your tunic into a soggy rag, and the markets hum, drums thumping, camels snorting. The sharp scent of cola nuts feels like a taunt. You're guilty of shortchanging a merchant, and Mali's justice system seems determined to make you a legend for all the wrong reasons. Now, the Qadi's next punishment looms: the silent walk, a peculiar penalty that strips you of your voice in a city where words are currency. The Qadi steps forward, his robe untouched by the dust that clings to you like a second skin, and announces your sentence with a voice that cuts through the crowd's murmurs. For one full day, you're forbidden to speak, forced to walk Timbuktu's streets in silence as a living lesson in humility. Any sound from your lips, a whisper, a cough, even a groan, will extend your punishment another day. In the Mali Empire, where oral tradition reigns through griots and market haggling, silence is a profound exile, cutting you off from the community's lifeblood. Historians note that such penalties, rooted in Islamic principles of repentance and local customs, were used to shame offenders while reinforcing social bonds. You're handed a strip of indigo cloth, dyed so dark it seems to swallow the light. The attendant ties it loosely around your neck, not to cover your mouth, but as a visible mark of your vow. The crowd watches, their eyes glinting with curiosity, and you feel like a camel on display, minus the dignity. You're told to begin your walk, starting at the plaza and circling through the market's heart. Past the salt stalls where this mess began, you stand, your branded hand aching, and take your first step. The silence already heavy. You'd quip about needing a vow of silence app, but, well, you can't. And the irony stings more than the brand. Here's the quirky bit to ensure you don't cheat. A young boy follows you, clutching a small bell that jingles with every step, echoing the one from your earlier walk of shame. His job is to report any sound you make, and his grin suggests he's enjoying this far too much. Historians still argue whether these child monitors were meant to enforce the punishment or add a layer of public amusement. But right now, it feels like Timbuktu's court is trolling you. You bite your lip, determined to stay mute, as the boy's bell chimes, drawing every trader's gaze. A woman selling clay pots smirks, and you swear even the camels are side-eyeing you. You weave through the market, the silence amplifying every sound vendors shouting, drums pulsing, the clink of cowrie shells. Your throat itches, begging for a cough. But you swallow hard, remembering the Qadi's warning. You pass the merchant who accused you, his turban bobbing as he haggles, probably dreaming of the camel you still owe. The memory of the rigged scales, the griot's song, and the river's cold judgment swirls in your mind, each punishment a verse in Mali's endless justice saga. You want to shout your innocence, but the indigo cloth around your neck feels like a gag, even if it's just symbolic. The sun climbs higher, baking the plaza into a clay oven. Sweat trickles into your eyes, and you resist the urge to groan, the boy's bell jingling like a relentless reminder. You catch a whiff of roasted millet, your stomach growling loud enough to make a nearby trader chuckle. You shoot him a look, but he just shrugs, as if to say, "Silent guy's got no come back." The walk stretches on. Your sandals, those lying ones, the griot mocked, kicking up dust that clings to your legs. The Qadi watches from a distance, ensuring you follow the rules. You're starting to think Timbuktu's court loves these theatrical penalties, each one weirder than the last. As you near the market's end, you overhear whispers of what's next, something about a song of your own. For now, you keep walking, mute, the indigo cloth a quiet weight around your neck. You're weaving through Timbuktu's bustling market, The indigo cloth around your neck a silent badge of your enforced muteness. Each step a struggle to keep your lips sealed. The sun is a relentless overseer, baking your tunic into a damp shroud. And the boy trailing you with his jingling bell is like a pint-sized jailer, grinning as he watches for any slip. You're serving the silent walk, a punishment for shortchanging a salt merchant. And Molly's court has already dragged you through a gauntlet of shame griot's stinging song, rattling shame mask, desert exile, river ordeal, pebble test, and a searing hand brand. Now, as your day of silence nears its end, the Qadi's next penalty looms a song of repentance, a peculiar ritual where you must sing to reclaim your honor, turning Timbuktu's love of words against you in a public performance. The market's noise drums thumping, traders haggling, camels snorting, feels louder in your forced silence. The scent of roasted cola nuts, a cruel tease for your empty stomach. You're led back to the plaza as dusk paints the sky in soft ambers, the crowd gathering like they've bought tickets to your humiliation tour. The Qadi stands on the platform, his robe catching the fading light, and gestures for you to kneel. The indigo cloth is untied, and you flex your jaw, relieved to breathe freely but nervous about what's next. The boy with the bell steps back, his job done, and you catch a glimpse of the merchant, his turban bobbing as he whispers to a trader, probably betting on your next fumble. In the Mali Empire, oral performance was central to justice, and singing as repentance was a way to restore community trust. Historians note that such rituals, blending Islamic repentance with Sahelian storytelling, turned the guilty into living lessons. You're handed a small wooden stool, mercifully not the sun-baked one from your trial's start, and told to prepare a song. The catch: you must compose it yourself, right now. And it has to confess your crime, praise Timbuktu's justice, and beg forgiveness. You're no griot. And the last time you sang was probably a drunken chant at a village feast. But there's no backing out. The Qadi's eyes are sharp, and the crowd's anticipation is a weight heavier than the shame mask you wore. You'd quip about needing a songwriting app, but the memory of the river ordeal's cold grip and the brand's searing pain keeps you focused. You clear your throat, your voice rusty from a day of silence, and the plaza falls quiet. Waiting, here's the quirky bit to inspire you. An attendant sprinkles a handful of millet grains around your stool, muttering a prayer to the ancestors for eloquence. It's supposed to channel wisdom, but it mostly attracts a curious sparrow that hops too close, making the crowd chuckle. Historians still argue whether these gestures were spiritual aids or just theatrical flair to heighten the drama. But right now, it feels like another test of your nerves. You start singing, your voice wobbling like a camel on uneven sand. Oh, Timbuktu, city of salt and truth. You begin, piecing together words about your wandering hands and the merchant's honor, echoing the griot's earlier roast. The crowd nods, some clapping, and you realize you're not half bad, or at least they're too entertained to jeer. You weave in praise for the Qadi's wisdom and the market's fairness, your lyrics clumsy but earnest. You mention the scales, the river, the pebbles, even the amulet in your pocket. Its spiral matching your branded hand. The song's not perfect, but it's yours. And the crowd's approval grows, their murmurs softening into something like respect. You finish with a plea for forgiveness, your voice steadier now, and the Qadi raises a hand, signaling acceptance. The crowd claps, and you slump on the stool, exhausted but relieved. The merchant, though, looks unimpressed, probably still dreaming of his camel. The Qadi announces that your song has earned you a chance at redemption, but another punishment awaits to complete your lesson. You catch a whiff of roasted millet, your stomach growling, and wonder how many more acts this desert drama has. Molly's Court loves its theatrics, and you're still the star of this peculiar show. You're sitting on that worn wooden stool in Timbuktu's dusty plaza, your throat raw from the song of repentance you just croaked out to a crowd that clapped more for the show than your sincerity. The fading dusk paints the market in soft golds, but the air still carries the sharp tang of roasted cola nuts and camel sweat, a reminder of the long day you've endured. You're guilty of shortchanging a salt merchant, and Molly's Court has spun that mistake into a saga of shame griot's mocking tune, jingling bell walk, rattling shame mask, desert exile, river ordeal, pebble test, hand branding, and silent trek. Your latest performance earned a nod from the Qadi, but his next punishment is already looming: the cowrie shell fine, a penalty that sounds simple but hits like a sandstorm, demanding a fortune you don't have. The Qadi steps forward, his robe catching the last of the light, and announces your sentence with a voice that silences the market's hum. You must pay a fine of 500 cowrie shells to the merchant by tomorrow's dawn, a sum meant to restore his honor and Timbuktu's trust in trade. Cowries, those small glossy shells, are Mali's currency, each one a tiny piece of wealth traded across the Sahara. In 1325, they're as vital as salt, and 500 is a fortune for someone like you, a nobody with barely a handful to your name. Historians note that fines were common in Mali's courts, rooted in Islamic principles of restitution, but often scaled to humble the guilty rather than bankrupt them. You're not so sure about that last part. You're led to a low table where an attendant dumps a sack of cowries, their clatter drawing the crowd's eyes. You're told to count them out, ensuring the merchant gets his due. Your branded hand throbs under its linen wrap, the spiral mark a stinging reminder of earlier punishments. You start counting, each shell smooth and cool, but the pile looks pitifully small. The merchant, his turban bobbing, watches with a smirk, probably already planning his next salt deal. You'd quip about needing a loan from Mansa Musa himself, but the Qadi's glare keeps your lips sealed. Silence is a habit now, thanks to that indigo cloth walk. Here's the quirky bit before you begin. An elder sprinkles a pinch of millet dust over the shells, muttering a prayer for clarity and wealth. It's supposed to bless the transaction, but it just makes you sneeze, earning a chuckle from a nearby trader. Historians still argue whether these rituals were meant to sanctify fines or add a layer of public theater. But right now, it feels like another jab at your dignity. You count to 200 before realizing you're nowhere near 500, and the attendant confirms your worst fear. You're short, way short. The crowd murmurs, some pitying, others whispering proverbs about greed. You look to the Qadi, hoping for mercy, but his face is stone, like the desert itself carved it. The Qadi declares that if you can't pay by dawn, you'll face a harsher penalty, something about weaving, which sounds ominous in a city that loves its symbolic punishments. You slump, the shells glinting like tiny accusations. You remember the griot's song, the rigged scales, the river's cold judgment, the pebble test's endless clinks, and the brand's searing pain. Each ordeal feels like a verse in Mali's justice epic, and this fine is just another chapter. You clutch the amulet in your pocket, its spiral carving a faint echo of hope. But it's hard to feel optimistic when you're staring at a debt bigger than your future. The market's noise swells drums, haggling. A camel snort as the crowd disperses, leaving you with the table of shells and a sinking heart. The merchant lingers, his eyes on the cowries like they're already his. You catch a whiff of roasted millet, your stomach growling, a cruel reminder of the meal you can't afford. The Qadi's attendant looms, ensuring you don't pocket a single shell. You're starting to think Timbuktu's court is a machine, built to grind you down. each punishment more creative than the last. As night falls, you're left to ponder how to scrape together a fortune by sunrise, knowing the next penalty will be as peculiar as a fine you'll never pay. You're hunched over a low table in Timbuktu's fading plaza, the pile of cowrie shells before you, mocking your empty pockets as the night's cool air settles like a thin veil. The Qadi's fine of 500 shells for shortchanging a salt merchant is a fortune you can't pay. And the merchant's smug grin, his turban bobbing in the torchlight, tells you he knows it. The market's bustle has softened, but the scent of roasted kola nuts and camel dung lingers, a reminder of the day's relentless trials, griot's stinging song, jingling bell walk, shame masks rattle, desert exile, river ordeal, pebble test, hand branding, silent trek, and that shaky repentance song. Now, with dawn looming and your fine unpaid, the Qadi's next punishment is a peculiar twist, the Weaver's Curse, a penalty that binds you to a loom until you've learned your lesson about honesty. The Qadi, his robe glowing faintly under the stars, steps forward and declares your sentence with a voice that carries the weight of Timbuktu's justice. Since you can't pay the cowrie fine, you're to spend 3 days weaving cloth for the merchant's household, each thread a reminder of the trust you broke. In the Mali Empire, weaving was a skilled craft, often tied to women's labor, but used in courts as a symbolic punishment for liars, forcing them to create something honest with their hands. Historians note that such penalties, blending Islamic restitution with Sahelian traditions, aimed to restore community harmony through labor. You're no weaver, and the thought of tangling threads for days makes your branded hand throb harder under its linen wrap. You're led to a mud brick workshop just off the plaza, where a wooden loom squats like a judgmental elder. The attendant, a stern woman with calloused hands, hands you a shuttle and a pile of coarse cotton threads. The loom's frame is worn, its beams etched with faint spirals, eerily like the amulet in your pocket and the brand on your palm. You're told to weave a bolt of cloth, plain but flawless. By the 3rd day's end, any mistakes, snags, loose threads, or uneven edges will extend your sentence. You'd quip about needing a weaving tutorial, but the memory of the silent walk's enforced muteness keeps you quiet. The crowd, smaller now, watches from the doorway, their murmurs mixing with the distant thump of djembe drums. Here's the quirky bit before you start. The attendant scatters a handful of millet grains across the loom, chanting a prayer to weave truth into the threads. It's meant to bless your work, but the grains stick to the cotton, making your first attempt a gritty mess. Historians still argue whether these rituals were spiritual necessities or just another way to trip up the guilty. But right now, it feels like Timbuktu's court is laughing at you. You fumble with the shuttle, the threads tangling like your thoughts, and the attendant sighs, muttering about your dishonest hands. The crowd chuckles, and you're pretty sure even the donkey you dragged through the desert would weave better than this. You settle into the task, the loom creaking with each pass of the shuttle. The workshop smells of dust and raw cotton, and your stomach growls, still empty since that millet beer ages ago. You remember the griot's song, the rigged scales, the river's cold judgment, and the pebble test's endless clinks, each punishment a thread in Mali's justice tapestry. And now you're literally weaving one. The merchant lingers outside, probably dreaming of his camel and the cloth you'll never finish in time. Your branded hand aches, the spiral mark pulsing with every awkward tug of the thread. You're starting to think this curse is less about the loom and more about breaking your spirit. As night deepens, the workshop's oil lamp flickers, casting shadows that dance like desert djinn. The attendant watches, ensuring you don't slack, her eyes sharp as the obsidian blades from your river ordeal. You're exhausted, your fingers cramping, but stopping isn't an option. The Cadi's court loves its symbolic penalties, and this weaving task is another act in their dusty drama. You overhear whispers of what's next, something about a cage under the stars. You clutch the amulet, its spiral a faint echo of hope, and keep weaving, each thread a plea to escape Timbuktu's relentless justice before it unravels you completely. You're hunched over the creaking loom in Timbuktu's mud brick workshop, your fingers fumbling with coarse cotton threads as the oil lamp's flicker casts jittery shadows. The weaver's curse, your latest punishment for shortchanging a salt merchant, has you weaving a bolt of cloth for 3 days, each snag a reminder of your dishonest hands. The air smells of dust and raw cotton, and your branded hand throbs under its linen wrap, the spiral mark pulsing with every clumsy pass of the shuttle. The plaza outside hums faintly, djembe drums, traders' murmurs, the sharp tang of roasted cola nuts, but inside, it's just you, the stern attendant, and a loom that feels like it's judging you. You've endured a griot's mocking song, a jingling bell walk, a shame mask, desert exile, river ordeal, pebble test, hand branding, silent trek, repentance song, and an unpayable Kari fine. Now, the Cadi's court ups the ante with a new penalty, a night in the cage, a peculiar punishment that leaves you exposed under Timbuktu's starlit sky. The attendant, her calloused hands folded, announces your next sentence as you struggle with a tangled thread. Since your weaving is lacking truth, you'll spend tonight in a wooden cage in the plaza, a public display to teach humility. In the Mali Empire, caging was a rare but vivid penalty, used to shame offenders while letting the community and the stars bear witness. Historians note that such punishments, blending Islamic justice with Sahelian spectacle, turned the guilty into living parables. Their exposure a lesson in accountability. You'd quip about preferring a cozy inn, but the memory of the silent walks enforced muteness and the loom's unrelenting demands keep your lips sealed. You're led from the workshop as dawn breaks. The loom left behind with its half-finished cloth, a mess of snags you're not proud of. The plaza is waking, traders setting up stalls, camels snorting under salt loads. The cage awaits a rickety structure of acacia wood, barely big enough for you to sit upright, its bars lashed with palm fronds. The crowd gathers, their indigo robes catching the morning light. And you spot the merchant, his turban bobbing as he whispers to a trader, probably gloating about his camel you still owe. You're pushed inside, the door latched with a rope, and the BE is hoisted onto a low platform. You feel like a bird in a very bad market stall, and the crowd's stares sting worse than the brand on your hand. Here's the quirky bit before the cage is sealed. An elder sprinkles millet grains around its base, chanting a prayer to bind your shame to the stars. It's supposed to ensure cosmic oversight, but it mostly attracts a curious sparrow that pecks too close, making the crowd chuckle. Historians still argue whether these rituals were spiritual necessities or just theatrical flourishes to amplify public shaming. But right now, it feels like another jab at your dwindling dignity. You settle into the cage, your knees cramped, the amulet in your pocket, its spiral matching your brand of faint comfort. The sun climbs, baking the cage into a wooden oven, and you ration the small gourd of water they've left you, its contents warm and gritty. The day drags, the market's noise drums, haggling, a donkey's bray mocking your confinement. People point, children mimic your hunched posture, and a woman selling clay pots tosses you a pitying glance. You want to shout about the rigged scales or the griot's exaggerated song, but the cage's bars and the Cadi's distant gaze silence you. You remember the river ordeal's cold grip, the pebble test's endless clinks, the weaving's tangled threads, each punishment a verse in Mali's justice epic. And this cage is just another stanza. The merchant lingers, his eyes on you like you're a camel he's already claimed. Your stomach growls, the scent of roasted millet, a cruel tease, and you wonder how many more tests Timbuktu's court can dream up. As night falls, the stars emerge, sharp against the desert sky, and the cage's bars cast striped shadows across your tunic. The crowd thins, leaving you alone with the cricket's hum and the occasional hoot of an owl. The Qadi's attendant checks on you, ensuring you're still caged, her lantern glinting like a desert djinn. You're exhausted, your body aching from the cramped space, but sleep is impossible. The next punishment, you overhear, involves scorpions, surely a rumor. But with Mali's flair for theatrics, you're not so sure. You clutch the amulet, its spiral a whisper of hope, and wait for dawn, knowing Timbuktu's justice is as relentless as the stars above. You're curled up in that cramped wooden cage in Timbuktu's plaza, the night's chill seeping through your tunic as the stars above glitter like 1,000 judgmental eyes. Your branded hand aches, the spiral mark throbbing under its linen wrap, and your knees scream from hours of hunching. The market's humdrums, haggling. Roasted kola nuts has faded to a distant murmur, replaced by crickets and the occasional owl's hoot. You're serving a night in the cage for shortchanging a salt merchant, a penalty that's just one verse in Mali's epic of peculiar punishments, griot's mocking song, jingling bell walk, shame mask, desert exile, river ordeal, pebble test, hand branding, silent trek, repentance song, unpayable cowrie fine, and tangled weaving. Now, as dawn's first light paints the sky, the Qadi's next penalty looms the scorpion pit, a rare and terrifying ordeal that tests your courage in a way Timbuktu's court loves dramatically. The cage's door creaks open, and an attendant pulls you out. Your legs wobbling like a camel after a long caravan. The plaza is stirring, traders setting up stalls, the air sharp with dust and millet porridge. The Qadi, his robe pristine despite the early hour, stands on the platform and announces your sentence with a voice that silences the waking market. For your persistent dishonesty, you'll face the scorpion pit, a shallow trench filled with desert scorpions, where you must stand for an hour to prove your resolve. In the Mali Empire, such extreme ordeals were reserved for cases that demanded a spectacle, blending Islamic justice with Sahelian flair for cosmic tests. Historians note that scorpion pits, though rare, were used to deter repeat offenders, their terror a public lesson in accountability. You're led to a corner of the plaza where a circular trench, no deeper than your knees, has been dug into the packed earth. Its walls shimmer with movement. Dozens of small black scorpions scuttle across the dirt, their tails curved like tiny warnings. The crowd gathers, their indigo robes a blur of color, and you spot the merchant, his turban bobbing as he whispers to a trader, probably betting on your nerve. You're handed a pair of thick linen wraps for your feet, a small mercy, but your heart pounds louder than the djembe drums. You'd quip about needing scorpion-proof armor, but the memory of the silent walk and the cage's cramped night keeps you mute. Here's the quirky bit before you step in. An elder scatters a handful of crushed kola nuts around the pit's edge, chanting a prayer to calm the desert's sting. It's meant to appease the scorpion's spirits, but you're pretty sure it's just seasoning you for their breakfast. Historians still argue whether these rituals were genuine attempts at divine protection or theatrical ploys to heighten the drama. But right now, it feels like another twist in Timbuktu's relentless justice. You step into the pit, the linen wraps doing little to ease the crunch of scorpions underfoot. They skitter around your ankles, some climbing the trench's walls, and you freeze, every muscle screaming to bolt. The crowd leans in, some wincing, others whispering proverbs about courage. You stand, barely breathing, as the scorpions crawl, their tails glinting in the morning sun. One brushes your calf, and you bite your lip to stifle a yelp, remembering the silent walk's lessons. The Qadi watches, his face unreadable, while the attendant times your hour with a knotted cord, each knot a minute. You think of the griot's song, the rigged scales, the river's cold grip, the weaving's tangled threads, each punishment a thread in Mali's justice tapestry. And this pit is the most terrifying yet. The merchant smirks, probably dreaming of his camel, and you clutch the amulet in your pocket. Its spiral a faint anchor against panic. The hour drags. The scorpions scuttle a constant hum, the air thick with dust and fear. Miraculously, none sting you, though you're not sure if it's the Kola prayer or sheer luck. The attendant signals the end, and you're pulled out, trembling but unscathed. The crowd murmurs approval, but the Qadi's nod is curt. He announces another punishment to finalize your lesson. You slump, the pit's terror still crawling over your skin, and catch a whiff of roasted millet, your stomach growling. Timbuktu's court loves its theatrics, and this scorpion ordeal is just another act in a drama that's starting to feel like a desert nightmare. You're standing on the edge of Timbuktu's plaza, legs still trembling from the scorpion pit, where you stood for an hour among skittering terrors, miraculously unstung but shaken to your core. The morning sun blazing bee, turning your tunic into a damp rag, and the market's pulse, drums thumping, traders haggling. The sharp scent of roasted cola nuts feels like a taunt after your ordeal. You're guilty of shortchanging a salt merchant, a crime that spun a web of punishments. Griot's mocking song, jingling bell walk, shame mask, desert exile, river ordeal, pebble test, hand branding, silent trek, repentance song, unpayable cowrie fine, tangled weaving, and a night caged under the stars. Now, the Qadi's court unveils another peculiar penalty, the grain tithe trick, a punishment for dodging the king's grain tax, which you didn't even know you were accused of until now. The Qadi, his robe pristine despite the dust, steps onto the platform and declares your new sentence with a voice that quiets the market's hum. You've been found guilty of withholding grain from the royal tithe, a secondary charge tacked onto your salt trading blunder, likely because the court suspects you're a repeat offender. You're to deliver a sack of millet to the king's granary by dusk. But here's the catch: you must carry it across Timbuktu on your back, through the market's busiest streets, without spilling a single grain. In the Lo Empire, tithing was a sacred duty, ensuring the empire's wealth under Mansa Musa's reign. Historians note that tax evasion, even minor, was harshly punished to maintain the empire's economic order, often with symbolic tasks to shame the guilty. You're handed a coarse linen sack, bulging with millet, its weight heavier than the shame mask you wore days ago. The attendant ties it to your shoulders with palm frond ropes, the knots digging into your skin. Your branded hand throbs under its linen wrap, and you're still sore from the cage's cramped night. The crowd gathers, their indigo robes a sea of curious eyes. And you spot the merchant, his turban bobbing as he whispers to a trader, probably gloating about the camel you still owe. You'd quip about needing a gym membership for this, but the memory of the silent walk and the scorpion pit's terror keeps you quiet. You take your first step, the sack shifting like a grumpy camel on your back. Here's the quirky bit before you start. An elder scatters a handful of cowrie shells around your feet, chanting a prayer to bind your steps to honesty. It's meant to ensure you don't cheat, but the shells crunch under your sandals, making each step a slippery test. Historians still argue whether these rituals were spiritual safeguards or just another way to trip up the accused. But right now, it feels like Timbuktu's court is stacking the odds against you. The crowd chuckles as you wobble, the sack teetering, and a child mimics your hunched posture. Earning giggles, you grit your teeth, determined not to spill, knowing one lost grain could extend your punishment. You trudge through the market, the sack's weight grinding your spine, the ropes chafing your shoulders. The market's noise camels snorting, traders shouting, drums pulsing drowns out your heavy breaths. People point, some offering pitying glances, others shouting proverbs about greed. You pass the salt stalls, their white slabs glinting like accusations. And remember the rigged scales that started this mess? The griot's song, the river's cold grip, the weaving's tangled threads. The scorpion pits scuttle all swirl in your mind. Each punishment a verse in Mali's justice saga. The merchant lingers, his eyes on your sack like it's his next prize. You clutch the amulet in your pocket, its spiral a faint hope, but the granary feels miles away. The sun climbs, baking the plaza into a clay oven, and sweat stings your eyes. You're halfway through the market when a stray dog darts by, nearly toppling you. The sack wobbles, but you catch it, heart pounding, the crowd gasping like they're watching a camel race. The Qadi's attendant follows, ensuring no grain escapes. Her gaze sharp as the obsidian blades from the river ordeal. You reach the granary by dusk, miraculously spill free, and collapse, the sack thudding beside you. The crowd murmurs approval, but the Qadi's nod is curt. He announces another punishment to deepen your reform. You slump, the scent of roasted millet a cruel tease, and wonder how many more acts Timbuktu's court can dream up in this dusty drama. You're sprawled beside the king's granary in Timbuktu's bustling plaza, the heavy sack of millet you hauled across the market still intact. Not a single grain spilled, despite the sun's relentless heat and a stray dog's near disaster. Your shoulders ache from the palm frond ropes, and your branded hand throbs under its linen wrap. The spiral mark a constant reminder of your salt-trading blunder. The market hums drums thumping, traders haggling, the sharp scent of roasted cola nuts teasing your empty stomach. You're guilty of shortchanging a merchant and dodging the king's grain tithe. A crime Mali's court has punished with a griot's mocking song, jingling bell walk, shame mask, desert exile, river ordeal, pebble test, hand branding, silent trek, repentance song, unpayable cowrie, fine, tangled weaving, caged night, scorpion pit, and grueling grain trek. Now, the Qadi's next penalty is as peculiar as ever. The drummer's ban, a cultural exile that strips you of Timbuktu's rhythmic heartbeat. The Qadi, his robe catching the dusk's soft glow, steps onto the platform and announces your sentence with a voice that silences the market's pulse. For your dishonesty in trade and tax, you're barred from drumming or even touching a drum for 7 days, a punishment that cuts you off from Mali's soul. In the Mali Empire, drums were more than instruments. They were the voice of community, faith, and history, carrying messages across villages and animating every ritual. Historians note that banning someone from drumming was a rare but profound penalty, used to isolate offenders from cultural life, blending Islamic justice with Sahelian traditions of communal harmony. You're no griot, but the thought of being excluded from Timbuktu's rhythm stings like the scorpion pit's terror. You're led to the plaza's center, where a djembe drum sits, its goatskin taut and inviting. The crowd gathers, Their indigo robes a sea of curious eyes, and you spot the merchant. His turban bobbing, see he whispers to a trader, probably gloating about his camel you still owe. An attendant hands you a woven karambor, dyed deep ochre, and ties it around your wrist as a mark of your ban. You're told to walk Timbuktu's streets, avoiding every drum circle, festival, or ritual where the djembe's pulse reigns. You'd quip about needing noise-canceling headphones, but the memory of the silent walk and the grain sack's weight keeps you quiet. The crowd murmurs, some pitying, others nodding, as if your silence will teach the market to sing honestly. Here's the quirky bit before you begin. An elder scatters millet grains around the djembe, chanting a prayer to still the rhythm of deceit. It's meant to bind your band to the ancestors, but the grains attract a sparrow that pecks too close, making the crowd chuckle. Historians still argue whether these rituals were spiritual necessities or just theatrical ploys to amplify shame. But right now, it feels like another jab at your dwindling dignity. You start walking, the ochre cord a heavy bracelet, and the plaza's drums followed as you move toward quieter streets. The market's noise camels snorting, traders shouting feels hollow without the djembe's heartbeat. Like Timbuktu's soul is just out of reach. You pass a festival forming near the mosque, where drummers pound a rhythm that vibrates in your chest. You ache to join, to clap or sway, but the cord on your wrist and the attendant trailing you ensure you keep your distance. People point, children mimic your stiff walk, and a woman selling clay pots whispers, "No drums for the cheat." You want to protest, to shout about the rigged scales or the griot's exaggerated song, but the court's lessons, silence, endurance, shame hold you back. You remember the river ordeal's cold grip, the weaving's tangled threads, the scorpion pit's scuttle, each punishment a verse in Mali's justice epic. The merchant lingers in the crowd, his eyes on you like you're a camel he's already claimed. The day drags, the sun dipping low, painting the mud brick walls in amber. Your stomach growls, the scent of roasted millet, a cruel tease, and you clutch the amulet in your pocket. Its spiral a faint echo of hope. The Qadi's attendant watches, ensuring you steer clear of every drum. You're starting to think Timbuktu's court is a master of creative cruelty, each penalty weirder than the last. As night falls, you overhear whispers of what's next, something about a post and hyenas. You shudder, hoping it's just market gossip. But with Mali's flair for theatrics, you're not so sure. For now, you keep walking. The ochre cord a quiet weight, exiled from the rhythm that binds Timbuktu's heart. You're trudging through Timbuktu's quieter streets, the ochre cord on your wrist a constant reminder of the drummer's band that's cut you off from the city's rhythmic heartbeat. The evening air is cooler, but your tunic clings, damp from a day under the Sahara's relentless sun, and the faint scent of roasted cola nuts from distant stalls teases your empty stomach. You're guilty of shortchanging a salt merchant and dodging the king's grain tithe. Crimes that have fueled Mali's court's parade of peculiar punishments, griot's mocking song, jingling bell walk, shame mask, desert exile, river ordeal, pebble test, hand branding, silent trek, repentance song, unpayable cowrie fine, tangled weaving, caged night, scorpion pit, and grain trek. Now, as you skirt the edge of a fading drum circle, the Qadi's next penalty looms the hyena's shadow, a bizarre public shaming that ties you to a post and mocks you as bait for Timbuktu's scavengers. The Qadi's attendant, a wiry man with eyes like desert hawks, leads you back to the plaza as twilight drapes the mud brick walls in soft purples. The crowd gathers, smaller but no less curious, their indigo robes catching the torchlight. The Qadi, standing tall on the platform, announces your sentence with a voice that silences the market's hum. For your persistent deceit, you'll be tied to a wooden post at the city's edge for one night, mocked as hyena bait to teach humility. In the Mali Empire, such theatrical punishments were rare but potent, using the desert's fearsome reputation to shame offenders. Historians note that hyena-related penalties, rooted in Sahelian folklore, played on cultural fears of scavengers to reinforce community trust. You're led to a clearing just beyond Timbuktu's walls, where a sturdy acacia post is driven into the sandy earth. The crowd follows, their murmurs blending with the distant thump of djembe drums you're still barred from joining. A rope, coarse as the palm frond ties from the grain trek, is looped around your wrists, securing you to the post. You're not truly bait. Hyenas rarely venture this close, but the mockery stings worse than the rope's bite. The crowd jeers, calling you hyena's shadow, and you spot the merchant, his turban bobbing as he laughs, probably dreaming of his camel. You'd quip about needing a better agent for this desert drama, but the ochre cord and the memory of the silent walk keep you mute. Here's the quirky bit before they leave you. An elder scatters millet grains around the post, chanting a prayer to ward off the desert's teeth. It's meant to protect you from actual hyenas, but it mostly attracts a curious lizard that darts too close, making the crowd chuckle. Historians still argue whether these rituals were genuine safeguards or just theatrical flourishes to heighten shame. But right now, it feels like another jab at your pride. You stand, wrists chafing, as the crowd paints your silhouette with insults. Hyena's friend salt stealer. The night stretches, the stars sharp above, and the desert's silence is broken only by the occasional yip of a real hyena. Far enough to be safe, but close enough to make your skin crawl. You shift against the post, your branded hand throbbing, the spiral mark a twin to the amulet in your pocket. You think of the griot's song, the scorpion pit's scuttle, the weaving's tangled threads, the drumless exile, each punishment a verse in Mali's justice epic. And this post is just another stanza. The crowd thins as torches fade, leaving you alone with the cricket's hum in the desert's vastness. You're exhausted, your legs aching from standing. But sleep is impossible with the rope's bite and the hyena calls. The merchant's laughter echoes in your mind, and you wonder if the rigged scales were his revenge or if revenge all along. The Qadi's attendant checks on you once, his lantern glinting like a desert djinn, ensuring you're still tied. As dawn nears, the air grows colder, and you clutch the amulet, its spiral a faint hope against the night's weight. You overhear whispers of what's next, something about a scholar's riddle, which sounds less terrifying than hyenas, but no less daunting with Timbuktu's flair for theatrics. Your stomach growls, the scent of roasted millet a distant memory, and you're starting to think Mali's court is a machine built to grind you into submission. For now, you stand, the post your only companion, mocked as the hyena's shadow in a city that never forgets a crime. You're untied from the acacia post at Timbuktu's edge, wrists raw from the coarse rope, and your body stiff from a night as the mocked hyena's shadow. Dawn's light creeps over the mud brick walls, but the desert's chill lingers in your bones, and the distant scent of roasted cola nuts from the waking market feels like a cruel tease. You're guilty of shortchanging a salt merchant and dodging the king's grain tithe, crimes that have fueled Mali's court's relentless punishments. Griot's song, jingling bell walk, shame mask, desert exile, river ordeal, pebble test, hand branding, silent trek, repentance song, unpayable cowrie fine, tangled weaving, caged night, scorpion pit, grain trek, and drumless exile. Now, as you're led back to the plaza, The Cadi's next penalty awaits the scholar's riddle, a peculiar test where your wit, not your endurance, must save you from Timbuktu's justice. The plaza buzzes with early traders, their indigo robes catching the sun as drums thump and camels snort under salt loads. The Cadi, his robe pristine, stands on the platform and announces your sentence with a voice that hushes the market's hum. For your deceitful mole, you'll face a riddle from a Timbuktu scholar, a test of intellect to prove your worth. Answer correctly, and you may clear your name. Fail, and another punishment looms. In the Mali Empire, riddles were more than games. They were tools of justice, rooted in Islamic scholarship and Sahelian oral traditions, testing wisdom over wealth. Historians note that Timbuktu's scholars used riddles to settle disputes, their complexity ensuring only the sharpest minds prevailed. You're led to a shaded corner where a scholar waits, his turban adorned with a single cowrie shell, his eyes sharp as the obsidian blades from the river ordeal. He sits cross-legged on a woven mat, a clay tablet before him etched with spirals eerily like your amulet and branded hand. The crowd gathers, smaller but attentive, and you spot the merchant, his turban bobbing as he whispers, probably betting on your failure. The scholar's riddle is simple but cryptic. I am weightless but heavy, invisible but seen, taken but never kept. What am I? You're given moments to think, your mind racing as the crowd leans in, their murmurs blending with the market's pulse. You'd quip about needing a coffee to spark your brain, but the memory of the scorpion pit's terror and the hyena post's chill keeps you focused. Here's the quirky bit before you answer. The scholar scatters millet grains across the tablet, chanting a prayer to unlock the mind's truth. It's meant to inspire wisdom, but the grains stick to your sweaty fingers, making you fumble as you gesture. Historians still argue whether these rituals were spiritual aids or deliberate distractions, but right now, it feels like another court trick. You pace, the riddle looping in your head. Weightless but heavy guilt, invisible but seen shame, taken but never kept a breath. The crowd's eyes bore into you, and you recall the griot's song, the rigged scales, the weaving's tangles, each punishment a puzzle, and this riddle feels like the sharpest yet. You blurt out, "A secret?" The scholar pauses, his face unreadable, then nods slowly. The crowd exhales, some clapping, others muttering proverbs about wit. You've passed, barely, and the Cadi's nod suggests a rare mercy. But he adds that your camel debt remains, and another penalty will complete your reform. You slump, the tablet spirals glinting like accusations. The merchant smirks, probably dreaming of his camel, and you clutch the amulet, its spiral a faint hope. The market's noise swells, traders shouting, drums pulsing, a camel's snort drowning your relief. You catch a whiff of roasted millet, your stomach growling, a reminder of the meal you're too drained to eat. Timbuktu's court loves its theatrics, and this riddle was just another act in a drama that's starting to feel endless. You're led back to the plaza's center, the scholar's tablet left behind, its spirals haunting you like the brand on your hand. You're exhausted, your mind frayed from riddles and your body aching from the post's ropes. The Cadi's attendant looms, ensuring you don't slip away. You're starting to think Mali's justice is a labyrinth, each penalty a twist leading to another. Whispers of what's next, something about a caravan float through the crowd, and you shudder, hoping it's less terrifying than scorpions or hyenas. For now, you stand, the plaza's dust clinging to your sandals, wondering how many more tests Timbuktu's court can dream up before you unravel completely. You're standing in Timbuktu's sun-dappled plaza, your mind still reeling from the scholar's riddle. Its cryptic answer, a secret barely earning you a nod from the cadi. The morning air carries the sharp tang of roasted kola nuts and camel sweat, but your stomach's too knotted to care. Growling from days of scant millet and lukewarm water, you're guilty of shortchanging a salt merchant and dodging the king's grain tithe. Crimes that have fueled Mali's court's relentless parade of punishments. Griot's song, jingling bell walk, shame mask, desert exile, river ordeal, pebble test, hand branding, silent trek, repentance song, unpayable Corey fine, tangled weaving, caged night, scorpion pit, grain trek, drumless exile, hyena post, and riddle test. Now, the cadi's next penalty is a grueling twist, the salt caravan duty. A forced march with Timbuktu's traders to prove your worth through sweat and sand. The cadi, his robe pristine against the dusty platform, announces your sentence with a voice that cuts through the market's humdrums thumping, traders haggling, camels snorting. For your dishonest trade, you're to join a salt caravan heading north to the Sahara mines, carrying a load of goods for 3 days to learn the value of honest labor. In the Mali Empire, caravans were the empire's arteries, hauling salt and gold across the desert, and forcing offenders to join them was a rare but symbolic penalty, teaching respect for trade's toil. Historians note that such punishments, blending Islamic justice with a Sahelian work ethic, turned the guilty into cogs in Mali's economic machine. You're led to the plaza's edge, where a caravan gathers camels laden with millet sacks, traders adjusting turbans, the air thick with dust and anticipation. An attendant hands you a heavy bundle of kola nuts wrapped in palm fronds, its weight rivaling the grain sack you hauled earlier. Your branded hand throbs under its linen wrap, the spiral mark a stinging reminder of past ordeals, and your shoulders ache from the hyena post's ropes. The caravan leader, a grizzled man with eyes like desert stones, sizes you up and mutters, "Don't slow us down." You'd quip about needing a camel of your own, that one you still owe the merchant, but the memory of the silent walk and the scorpion pit's scuttle keeps you quiet. Here's the quirky bit before the caravan moves. An elder scatters millet grains across your bundle, chanting a prayer to bind your steps to the salt's truth. It's meant to bless the journey, but the grains stick to the fronds, making your load itchier. Historians still argue whether these rituals were spiritual necessities or theatrical ploys to remind offenders of their place. But right now, it feels like another jab at your fraying patience. You hoist the bundle onto your back, the ropes digging in, and join the line of camels, their hooves kicking up sand. The crowd watches, some nodding, others whispering proverbs about labor, and you spot the merchant, his turban bobbing, probably dreaming of his camel. The caravan lurches forward, the desert stretching like a golden sea. The sun climbs, baking your tunic into a soggy shroud, and the bundle's weight grinds your spine. You trudge, sandals sinking into sand, those lying ones. The griot mocked each step a battle against heat and exhaustion. The trader's chants and the camel's grumbles fill the air, but you're too focused on not collapsing to join in. You think of the griot's song, the rigged scales, the river's cold grip, the riddle's cryptic words, each punishment a thread in Mali's justice tapestry. And this caravan is a brutal new weave. The leader barks at you to keep pace, and you clutch the amulet in your pocket. Its spiral, a faint hope against the desert's grind. The first day drags, the Sahara's dunes shimmering like a cruel mirage. Your water gourd, half empty from the desert exile, sloshes faintly, and you ration each sip, your throat dry as the sand. A trader offers you a kola nut, not out of kindness, but to test your endurance, and you chew it, its bitter tang waking you just enough to keep moving. The Qadi's attendant trails the caravan, ensuring you don't drop your load. His gaze sharp as the obsidian blades from the river ordeal. Whispers of what's next, something about an oath float among the traders. And you shudder, hoping it's less grueling than this march. For now, you trudge. The bundle heavy, the desert endless, and Timbuktu's court a distant shadow driving you deeper into its peculiar justice. You're trudging through the Sahara's scorching dunes, the kola nut bundle on your back, grinding your shoulders raw, each step a battle against the relentless heat and the caravan's unforgiving pace. The camel's grumbles and traders' chants are your only soundtrack. The air thick with sand and the faint, bitter tang of your chewed kola nut. You're serving the salt caravan duty, a punishment for shortchanging a salt merchant and dodging the king's grain tithe. Crimes that have fueled Mali's court's endless saga griot's mocking song. Jingling bell walk, shame mask, desert exile, river ordeal, pebble test, hand branding, silent trek. Repentance song, unpayable cowrie fine, tangled weaving, caged night, scorpion pit, grain trek, drumless exile, hyena post, and scholar's riddle. Now, back in Timbuktu's plaza after 3 grueling days, the Qadi's next penalty awaits the ancestor's oath, a peculiar ritual where you must swear on Mali's spirits, risking their wrath to prove your reform. The caravan returned at dawn, and you're led, aching and dust-caked, to the plaza's heart, where the market hums, drums, thumping, traders haggling, the sharp scent of roasted millet teasing your empty stomach. The Qadi, his robe pristine against the morning light, stands on the platform and announces your sentence with a voice that stills the crowd. For your deceitful heart, you'll swear an oath on Timbuktu's ancestors, vowing to never cheat again, under the threat of spiritual retribution. In the Mali Empire, oaths were sacred, binding the living to the dead, and breaking one invited curse from the spirit world. Historians note that such rituals, blending Islamic piety with Sahelian ancestor worship, were used to restore trust by invoking cosmic consequences. You're guided to a small clay shrine at the plaza's edge, its surface etched with spirals eerily like your amulet and branded hand. A griot, not the one who roasted you with song, but an elder with a voice like gravel, stands beside it, holding a gourd of millet beer. The crowd gathers, their indigo robes a sea of watchful eyes, and you spot the merchant, his turban bobbing, probably dreaming of his camel you still owe. You're told to kneel before the shrine, the gourd placed in your hands. You must drink, repeat the oath, and scatter millet grains to seal it. Break your vow, the griot warns, and the ancestors will haunt your steps. You'd quip about needing a ghost-free warranty, but the memory of the scorpion pit's scuttle and the caravan's grind keeps you silent. Here's the quirky bit before you drink. The griot sprinkles a pinch of kola nut powder into the gourd, chanting a prayer to bind your words to the spirits. It's meant to sanctify the oath, but the powder makes the beer taste like regret and sawdust, nearly choking you. Historians still argue whether these additives were spiritual necessities or subtle tests of resolve. But right now, it feels like another court jab. You force down a sip, the bitter brew stinging your throat, and repeat the oath. By Timbuktu's ancestors, I swear to trade with truth. Your voice wavers, the crowd leaning in, some nodding, others whispering proverbs about honor. You scatter the millet, grains catching the breeze, and the griot nods, sealing the ritual. The Qadi steps forward, his eyes sharp, and declares the oath accepted, but your camel debt remains. And one final punishment will complete your journey. You slump, the gourd still in your hands, the spiral shrine glinting like an accusation. You think of the griot's song, the rigged scales, the river's cold grip, the hyena post's chill. Each punishment a thread in Mali's justice tapestry, and this oath is a knot tying you to Timbuktu's spirits. The merchant smirks, his eyes on you like you're a camel he's already claimed. The market's noise swells camels snorting, traders shouting, drowning your exhaustion. Your branded hand throbs, and you clutch the amulet, its spiral of fading hope. The scent of roasted millet hits, your stomach growling, a cruel reminder of the meal you're too weary to eat. You're led back to the plaza's center, the shrine spirals haunting you like the brand on your hand. You're drained, your body aching from the caravan's march, your mind frayed from riddles and oaths. The Qadi's attendant looms, ensuring you don't slip away. Whispers of what's next a feast, of all things float through the crowd, and you hope it's less punishing than scorpions or caravans. Timbuktu's court loves its theatrics, and this oath, with its bitter beer and ancestral weight, is just another act in a drama that's starting to feel like a desert eternity. You're standing in Timbuktu's bustling plaza, the weight of the ancestors' oath still heavy on your shoulders, the bitter aftertaste of millet beer and cola powder lingering like a bad memory. The midday sun blazes, turning your tunic into a soggy rag, and the market's pulse drums thumping, traders haggling. The sharp scent of roasted cola nuts mocks your exhaustion. You're guilty of shortchanging a salt merchant and dodging the king's grain tithe. Crimes that have fueled Mali's court's relentless punishments, griot's mocking song, jingling bell walk, shame mask, desert exile, river ordeal, pebble test, hand branding, silent trek, repentance song, unpayable cowrie fine, tangled weaving, caged night, scorpion pit, grain trek, drumless exile, hyena post, scholar's riddle, and ancestral oath. Now, the Qadi's final penalty is a peculiar twist, the forgiveness feast, where you must host a communal meal to win back Timbuktu's trust. A task as daunting as it is theatrical. The Qadi, his robe pristine against the dusty platform, announces your sentence with a voice that silences the market's hum. To restore harmony, you're to prepare and host a feast for the merchant, the court, and the community by dusk, using your own resources or lack thereof. In the Mali Empire, communal feasts were sacred, sealing bonds and resolving disputes, and forcing offenders to host one was a symbolic penalty, blending Islamic restitution with Sahelian traditions of hospitality. Historians note that such feasts were less about food and more about public atonement, turning the guilty into servants of the community. You're no chef, and your pockets are emptier than a desert well, but the Qadi's stern gaze leaves no room for excuses. You're led to a cleared space near the plaza's edge, where a makeshift cooking area awaits clay pots, a fire pit, and a meager pile of millet, dates, and dried fish. Your branded hand throbs under its linen wrap, the spiral mark a twin to the amulet in your pocket, and your body aches from the caravan's march and the hyena post's ropes. The crowd gathers, their indigo robes a sea of expectant eyes, and you spot the merchant, his turban bobbing, probably dreaming of his camel you still owe. You're told to start cooking, the feast meant to feed at least 20 people, including the Qadi and the griot who roasted you with song. You'd quip about needing a catering service, but the memory of the silent walk and the scorpion pit's scuttle keeps you focused. Here's the quirky bit before you begin. An elder scatters millet grains around the fire pit, chanting a prayer to cook truth into the meal. It's meant to bless the feast, but the grains stick to your sweaty hands, making you fumble the first pot. Historians still argue whether these rituals were spiritual necessities or theatrical ploys to test the guilty. But right now, it feels like another court jab. You start boiling millet, the fire's heat stinging your face, and mix in dates for sweetness, the fish for substance. The crowd watches, some nodding, others whispering proverbs about generosity. You're no cook, and the millet clumps like your thoughts. But you keep stirring. Desperate to avoid another punishment, you work through the afternoon, the plaza's noise camels snorting, traders shouting, drowning your exhaustion. People offer advice, some helpful, others mocking, and a child tosses a date your way, giggling as you catch it. You think of the griot's song, the rigged scales, the river's cold grip, the riddle's cryptic words, each punishment a thread in Mali's justice tapestry. And this feast is the final weave. The merchant lingers, his eyes on your pots like they're his next prize. You serve the meal as dusk falls. Clay bowls passed around, the millet and fish surprisingly edible. The Qadi eats, his face unreadable, and the griot hums a new tune, this one kinder, praising your effort. The crowd joins, their laughter softer now, and you feel a flicker of hope. Maybe Timbuktu's trust is within reach. The Qadi rises, declaring the feast a success, but the camel debt remains. To be settled later. You're free, for now. The court's punishment's finally spent. You slump, the fire pit's embers glowing, and catch a whiff of roasted millet. Your stomach growling despite the meal you've served. The amulet in your pocket, its spiral matching your brand feels lighter, as if Mali's justice has loosened its grip. The merchant nods, less smug, and the crowd disperses, leaving you in the plaza's quiet. Timbuktu's court loves its theatrics, and this feast, with its clumpy millet and communal grace, is the final act in a drama that's left you humbled, exhausted, and oddly alive. You're standing in Timbuktu's quieting plaza, the embers of the forgiveness feast's fire pit glowing softly as the crowd disperses into the twilight. The clay bowls, scraped clean of your clumpy millet and fish, are stacked beside you, and the air carries a lingering warmth, mingled with the faint scent of roasted cola nuts. Your branded in hand aches under its linen wrap, the spiral mark a silent testament to your journey through Mali's court for shortchanging a salt merchant and dodging the king's grain tithe. You've endured a griot's mocking song, a jingling bell walk, a shame mask, desert exile, river ordeal, pebble test, hand branding, silent trek, repentance song, unpayable cowrie fine, tangled weaving, caged night, scorpion pit, grain trek, drumless exile, hyena post, scholar's riddle, ancestral oath, and a communal feast. Now, as the Qadi's final nod releases you, you reflect on Timbuktu's peculiar justice, your body weary but your spirit oddly steadied, ready to drift into peace. The Qadi, his robe catching the last of the dusk, steps down from the platform, his stern face softened by the feast's success. He declares your punishments complete, though the camel debt lingers, to be settled with the merchant later likely through labor, not coin. The crowd, their indigo robes fading into the evening, offers murmurs of approval, some even patting your shoulder as they pass. The griot, his kora slung across his back, hums a gentle tune, no longer mocking but almost kind, as if your millet feast has woven you back into Timbuktu's fabric. In the Mali Empire, justice wasn't just about punishment. It was about restoration, blending Islamic principles with Sahelian traditions to mend community trust. Historians note that such elaborate penalties, like your saga, were designed to teach rather than destroy, turning offenders into living lessons. You slump against a mud brick wall, the plaza's noise drums fading, traders packing up softening into a hum that feels almost soothing. Your sandals, those lying ones the griot sang about, are caked with dust, and your tunic clings, damp from a day of sweat and toil. You clutch the amulet in your pocket, its spiral carving a twin to your branded hand, and wonder if it was luck or fate that carried you through. The merchant, his turban no longer bobbing with smugness, nods from a distance, perhaps satisfied by the feast's gesture. You'd quip about deserving a medal for surviving Timbuktu's court, but the weight of your journey, the river's cold grip, the scorpion pit's scuttle, the riddle's cryptic words keeps you quiet, reflective. Here's the quirky bit as the plaza empties. A child runs up, dropping a single cowrie shell at your feet, giggling before darting away. It's not enough to pay your debt, but it feels like a small, unspoken apology from Timbuktu itself. Historians still argue whether these gestures were community traditions or spontaneous acts of pity. But right now, it's a spark of warmth in a day of trials. You pick up the shell, its glossy curve catching the torchlight, and tuck it beside the amulet, a reminder that even Mali's justice has moments of grace. The market's rhythm slows, the djembe's pulse now a distant echo, and you feel the weight of your punishments lifting. Like sand settling after a storm, you're free. For now, the court's theatrics spent. The plaza feels softer, its dust no longer choking, but grounding, its shadows no longer looming, but cradling. You think of the griot's song, the rigged scales, the hyena post's chill, each a lesson in trust, endurance, and community. Timbuktu's justice, peculiar and relentless, has reshaped you, not into a villain, but a story, one the market might hum for years. The stars emerge, sharp against the desert sky, and you breathe deeply, the air clean, the night calm. Wind down as you lean against the warm mud brick wall. The plaza's last torches flicker, casting a gentle glow over Timbuktu's quiet heart. The market's hum has faded, leaving only the soft chirp of crickets and the distant murmur of the Niger River, flowing like time itself. Your branded hand rests lightly, the spiral mark no longer a sting, but a story, etched into your skin like the amulet's quiet promise. The punishment's griot's song, scorpion pit, weaving's tangles, feast's clumpy millet dissolve into memory, each one a step that brought you here, to this moment of stillness. You're not the fool who stumbled over cowrie shells, you're the one who endured, who fed the community, who sang under the stars. The desert night wraps you gently, its breeze a whisper of forgiveness, its vastness a cradle for dreams. Let the plaza's dust settle, the market's rhythm fade, and your breath slow. Timbuktu's justice is done, and you are whole. Drift now into the quiet, where the stars keep watch and sleep carries you softly away.